Hey everyone, it is Vian from Mountain Road Ride here, and today I want to talk to you about waxing your bicycle chain. Now, if you've tried a few different chain lubrication methods in the past, then this one is going to be slightly different, and I do suggest that you at least give it a go once. You are going to be surprised at how well this thing works. If you want to know the steps on how to go about setting that up, I'm not going to claim that I am the mastermind behind this particular technique that I followed. In fact, I'm going to point you over to a playlist. I'm going to put 3 videos up in that link right there. And that is going to take you through to the channel Oz Cycle, where Stephen did a phenomenal job of explaining the process on how to go about, first of all, cleaning your bicycle chain, then waxing it, and then also how to create a handy sort of quick application bottled version of the wax. And so I'm not going to claim credit for those steps. I'm going to quickly cut away and show you how I went about setting it up, but basically I just followed his explanation and his steps to the T. So do check that out, and where he also goes into a lot more of the background, the research and the science that makes this method so effective, at least in theory. But we want to talk about how it actually performs, and I think if you watch his videos, you read the YouTube comments, there's so many people that have already had great success in various applications, but I wanted to look at it from a gravel riding context, and so that is what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about how well that chain lubrication method performs when you take it out on a gravel ride, and maybe just put it through its paces to test it out on some different conditions as well. So first of all, over to the cleaning process, and then we'll check out how it performs during the ride.
First up, I had to break the chain so I could get the quick link fitted. This shot gives you an idea of just how dirty a gravel chain can get after only a few rides. The biggest part of the pre-clean involves taking your chain from the petrol over into the degreaser, and then as a last step into the methylated spirits or denatured alcohol. To make sure there was no contamination on the drivetrain, I also thoroughly cleaned the cassette. As a last step, I also gave the bike a pretty good wash. The clean chain was now ready to be dipped into the melted wax and PTFE powder. After leaving the chain in the melted mix for about 10 to 15 minutes, I was ready to be hung up to dry. The wax chain will be pretty stiff after it dries, so you need to work out all that additional stiffness out of the chain. Once you've got all the links worked out, you can now fit the chain back onto your bike. And as a last step, you can use a simple paintbrush and just dust off any of the excess wax that might be coming off of your chain as you spin it the first few revolutions.
So I figured, instead of just talking about the benefits of a wax chain on a gravel bike, why not just go out and show you throughout a ride I'm going to do today how this chain performs throughout various conditions. I'm going to try and throw in a lot of muddy trails and also some dusty trails, and then that way you can see what the chain looks like after each of those different sections. Right now the bike is still perfectly clean, as you can see here behind me. I have just recently re-waxed the chain, and everything is still nice and sparkly on the bike right now. And what I'll do is I'll pause after each of those various sections to show you how the chain has changed. You can see right now the cassette's still nice and clean, nothing sticking to the cassette, nothing sticking to the chain. I can even run my fingers over it and nothing is staying on my hand. So we've got a fully re-waxed gravel bike chain here on that 1x system, as you can see. And so let's take it out on this ride and then check it out how it performs over a few different muddy and technical sections. Let's go. Alright, so we have just turned off of the road back there and on to our first gravel section for today. This is just going to lead us through a park that I have nearby. So on this first section, it's going to be mostly just dry gravel, and you can see from this shot over here that, you know, some of it will be rocky. It's kind of a fire road that just leads through the park, and then out on the other side, more of a dry, rocky type of conditions for gravel riding. We're going to get to the dirtier stuff a little bit later on. So for now, let's just see what it looks like at the end of the section and you know, just reassess how they performed on a dry, dusty gravel section. All right, so time to do a quick check-in. As you've seen on those trails, fairly dusty, dry, more rocky type of gravel riding. So in those type of conditions, you're not going to find a lot of dirt being attracted to your chain, but let's just see what it looks like at this stage after that bit of gravel riding as well. You can see the chain still very nice and sparkly right now, and I can still easily run my fingers over this. Nothing that sticks on my hands, just a bit of the excess wax that is on the chain that's now coming off, because since this was a new re-wax that I had on the chain, so that's to be expected, just some of the dust coming off. But you can see now what this wax actually does in this shot, because there you have the wax coming off, and it does attract the dirt, but this is exactly what this setup will do. It will just repel it off, and I think that is the beautiful thing about this setup. You can see my cassette still looking pretty good. Those of you who have done dirtier gravel rides will know that by this time what would normally happen with a regular lube is that you will have that lube sticking to the cogs, and that will just attract all kinds of dirt to the cassette itself. And again, I can run my finger over there and nothing is sticking as yet. So still, so far so good with this first section of dry, more dusty gravel. All right, so I think you can agree that some of those trails aren't exactly testing the limit of what this wax is going to do. You know, that was still fairly dry and dusty and rocky for the most part, so nothing too challenging on the lubrication. But now we've come over to a bit of a mountain biking playground where we're gonna really test this loop. So you can see the trails all around me. We'll find some river crossings in here as well, and then also maybe some more muddy trails. So let's go check it out. Right, so this is where the real fun is going to begin. Now we're on a bit more of a secluded trail, and you can already see some of the mud that's right here behind me. This trail will definitely have a lot more mud. We've had some rain in the past few days, and this one doesn't get as much sunshine. So let's now see, once I've gone through this trail, what this wax setup looks like, and what that kind of dirt accumulation looks like at the end of this one. So should be a fun one. Let's go get dirty. Here we go. Yeehaw! That's lame. Okay, there's no avoiding that one. I think you can see that I've had my fair share of mud by now, and this bike is starting to really look the part of a ride that has gone through very, very heavy mud. But let's check out the drivetrain, and this is the super impressive part. You can see that not a lot of that mud is sticking to the chain. Like, it can come off fairly easily. Yeah, you do get, you can hear there's a little bit of a grinding sound in there. That's the dirt and the sand going in there. So yep, that's still going to happen with this kind of a setup. I think that's just unavoidable. But so far, This ride is having its fair share of mud, and so far the drivetrain not looking too bad throughout all of this, so that is definitely a plus. Alright, so now that I'm out of that swampy trail, I can actually show you what a lot of you might be thinking right now, and that is like, how are these gears still performing after all that mud? Never mind how clean it looks. So let's check that out. I'm gonna set down the camera over here and then just run you through the gear range, and you can kind of get a sense of what the shifting looks like right now. There's definitely a bit of a grinding noise going on right now, but the shifting, if I can hold the bike while I do this, is still nice and smooth. There's still a very efficient shifting going on right now. Still goes through the gear range very neatly and nicely right now at this stage of the game, so that's good. Alright, so I hope you enjoy that little trip along my route today, and we are back after the ride. I have had the opportunity to clean up, but clearly the bike is still very dirty from that ride. I haven't touched it in any way as yet, so no water, nothing has been cleaned off of this bike as yet. Because I wanted to show you how this chain still performs after such a messy ride, and I'm gonna give you a quick close-up to see as I shift through the gears how the shifting is still performing. Alright, so here we are, and you can see now the chain has definitely had its fair share of use during this ride, but here's the great thing. I can wipe my hands on this chain still, and still nothing that sticks to my hand. If you tried this with any other type of lubrication, by now your hand would be completely smudged in black grime. So this is just phenomenal to see it come off like this. And this is just something that I am going to be able to wash off, and the chain will be back to normal. Again, also look at this cassette over here. With any other type of lubrication, I think you would have had a much dirtier ride. Alright, but cleanliness aside, I think that's only one part of the reason why you would want the wax lube. How does it still perform? I mean, right now it's still pretty much covered in all that mud, so we now need to just see if the shifting is still working as expected and how that shifting sounds. You can see as I move through it, there's definitely a bit of a grinding sound to it as that dirt and grime just still sits on that chain. Everything still works very well. You can see the mud just jump off of that chain as I shift through the range, but overall it's still doing a very good job. Even into that very smallest gear that I've got, slight grinding sound that I've got going on there, but it still functions, and that's the big thing. I think at the end of the day, when you've been when you subjected your bike to such extreme conditions, you still at least want it to be working. Good, so there you've now seen it close up, and at the end of such a muddy and messy ride, the chain still performs really well. So I must say, I am super pleased and surprised at how well this chain performed within the gravel riding context. I've tested it on my road bike as well, and there I absolutely have high praise for it. You can read my blog post that I will put in the description below. I break down my road riding experience in there. There, 10 out of 10. I tested it now in a gravel riding context, and I must say I am very surprised at how well it did. I was a bit skeptical to see if it was going to do the job as well, and I'm going to put it at about an 8 out of 10 for how well this wax chain does within a gravel riding context. Bottom line, does it work for gravel riding? Yes, it does. I can definitely recommend you put this on your chain at least once. Give it a go. If you don't like it, then you can always go back to traditional lubes as well. So yeah, definitely give it a shot. Now, I would just want to conclude with 5 things that I want you to keep in mind or consider before you move over to a wax-based lubrication. There's going to be a few things that you need to keep in mind. Now, first of all, it takes a little bit of time, like that setup process in the beginning with the different chemicals that you'll need, and also then waxing it, letting that wax heat up. That takes some time. So be sure to give yourself plenty of time if you are going to go through this process on an ongoing basis. Second of all is that chemical combination. So fortunately, you only have to go through that super harsh chemical mix in the beginning to break down all the oils and lubes that has been on your chain, whether it be an existing chain or a new chain. That is going to be the only time you need those chemicals. But you got to make sure that you have the correct ways to dispose of that once you are done with that initial cleaning process. So do make sure that you do your research on how to correctly dispose of those things. That's the second thing to keep in mind. The third thing is that you'll maybe need some space. With those chemicals comes the fact that you don't necessarily want to work in a closed environment. You need a well-ventilated space. Those fumes are potentially hazardous, and you're not going to be able to maybe do that in a small city apartment or a townhouse where you don't have the space to work with those sort of things. If you've got a dedicated shed or a barn, something like this behind me, where you can work with those things, then that is going to be ideal. But just keep that in mind when you are going the route of making a wax chain. The fourth thing is the fact that it requires quick link. So each time, obviously, when you want to re-wax your chain, you're going to have to take it off, and that requires you to have a quick link on your chain that you can disconnect and connect it more easily. Make sure you get a good quick link that you can either reuse. I suggest some of the KMC reusable master links. They work really well. You can reuse it a couple of times. Over on R-Cycle, he recommends that you use the Connex one. I've never used that connector link, so I can't really make any claim about that. But do make sure you get a really high quality quick link, because as the saying goes, your chain is only as strong as that weakest link, and you don't want to be messing up in terms of putting subpar quick links on there. So that's another thing to keep in mind when you are going to go over to a wax-based lubrication system. And the fifth and final one is just that you need to keep in mind that you are going to have a hot wax mix. That obviously you don't want to be working with in a kitchen or somewhere where kids and animals can get to it. Also, when you store it, you're going to need to find a good place to store that wax mix. So those are just quick 5 things that you need to keep in mind whenever you do decide to move over to a wax-based system. All right, I hope that was helpful. At the end of the day, this is a mind-blowing new method that I've discovered, and I must give great thanks to Oz Cycles for that particular method and explaining it so well. It's changed the way I now do bike maintenance, and I can definitely recommend that you give it a shot at least once. Try it. If it doesn't work, you can go back to your traditional lubes. All right, so that's it from my side. I am Vian from Mountain Road Ride. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and do subscribe to this channel. We'll have plenty more gravel related content in the future as well. So until then, see you next time.